Hello, everyone, and welcome to Future Careers. It's a month-long panel activities and webinars that will hopefully allow you to take charge of what's next in your career. It's a series of events that we've put together based on some of the great successes we've had over the last few months, particularly with our Open Day and many of our partners who took part. My name is Chaminda Ranasinghe. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at RMIT University, and it's my great pleasure to start off this series today with the first session, an industry Q&A panel around the future careers that we're all looking to explore. And as a dual sector university, RMIT prides itself in our commitment to partnering with industry to really make sure that the education that we provide responds to the demands of the industry and the community that we currently support. And we're dedicated to providing a transformative experience for our students to prepare them not just for work, but for life itself. And in today's circumstance, that's more important than ever. And I know that the university is really proud of recent achievements. In fact, we were ranked first in Australia recently for graduate outcomes. And in that context, it is really important that we continue to partner with our industry experts to make sure that the education that we provide is fit for purpose. And we know that through these learning experiences, we provide students with the knowledge, the skills, the experiences that support them grow, not just for what's needed today, but really to make sure that they're equipped to take on whatever we face into in the future and what comes next, so to speak. Now, before we begin today's session, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, whose unceded lands we conduct the business of our university. RMIT University respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders past, present and emerging. And of course, while we work remotely, I'm very conscious of most of us working from our homes. If that may be the case, I want to pay my respects to the wider unceded lands around the nation. Now, a bit of housekeeping before I introduce you to the panelists. Importantly, at the end of the session, there's room for questions from the audience, and I'd love to invite you to do that because we want to make sure that this is an open dialogue, and you can submit those questions through the Q&A tool on the right-hand side of the screen at any point in time, and the team will make sure that those questions get through to us. And there's also a scenario where if you do miss out and you want to see this at a later point, this is being recorded and will be made available. So please share it with others and let them know that they can follow at a later point in time. Now let's get into it. I'm really excited to introduce the panelists, some of whom have been on many other sessions with us in the past, and they're very special guests from great partners of ours. And first off, I'd like to introduce to Susan McKee. Susan is the Chief Executive Officer at Dental Health Services Victoria. Hi, Susan, great to have you on board. And also joining us today is Michelle Sanford. Michelle is the Developer Engagement PM at Microsoft. Great to have you with us, Michelle.
Great to be here.
But not least and last by any means, Dr. John Romulotis. John is the Head of Innovation, Automation and Analytics at NAB. And John and I were on a panel, in fact, at Open Day a few months ago. Welcome, John, and great to have you back again.
Thanks, Chaminda. Hi, everyone.
All right, let's dive in. To get started, what I'd love to hear from each of our panelists is a bit about yourself and the current role that you play at the organisation that you work at, but also the affiliation the organisation has with RMIT as an industry partner. We, as you know, work very closely with your organisations. I'm sure our audience would love to hear from you about the types of work you do with us. Let me start with you, Susan.
Thanks, Chami. So I'm Sue McKee. I'm the CEO at Dental Health Services Victoria. We run all the public dental services across the state. We do some of those ourselves, and a lot of them we actually contract to community dental agencies. I'm actually a nurse by trade. I started my nursing many years ago as a student nurse, back in the hospital system well before they started nursing at university. So that'll give you a bit of a gauge on how old I am. But as the CEO of Dental Health Services Victoria, it's really about bringing all of the knowledge and skills that I've learned working in the healthcare industry over the last 35 plus years and bringing that to the system. So one of the things that is really important for us as a teaching organisation is making sure that we have students from a variety of universities actually working with us to build the workforce of the future. So for us in RMIT, that's around our dental assistant training and also our prosthetist training as well, that the students come and work with us in our hospital and also work in a variety of places around the state as they get their training. So it's a great relationship because, I mean, my personal opinion is if you've got students in your building all of the time, it means that we as the people running the organisation or working in it need to stay up to date because we've got to keep ahead of the students, which sometimes is quite difficult because they often ask very challenging questions, which is awesome, means that we're all learning all of the time. You're on mute, Chami.
Never fails. And I was just to say, Sue, it's such a great time to be in the health sector. It's such a rewarding career, I've no doubt, but also in the current circumstances, we've seen a lot of interest from students into all aspects of the health sciences. So great to have you on board, and thank you. John, let me come to you next.
Yeah, so my name is John Ramaliotis. I'm, as you've mentioned, Chaminda, my title is I'm Head of Innovation, Automation and Analytics at National Australia Bank. So essentially my role is to help the organisation and essentially mostly the risk function within the organisation, which is a very large function, to innovate and automate. So what does that mean? That can mean a lot of things. Essentially what my team do and I do is help the bank become more efficient through use of analytics and data, help with gaining deeper insights through data, innovative methods, even the way we interact with dashboards, the way we, even 5 years ago, a lot of the interaction with our customers and through our data would be, let's say, batched up, monthly, maybe weekly. Now it's very live. So I help with gaining greater insight, making things easier, making things more efficient. Some of the things that we're very focused on now. So as a bank, things like credit risk, basically, the culture and lifeblood of the bank. Credit is what banks do, and market risk is very similar. We're now spanning into different areas of risk, and some of the things that we're focused on and doing now is helping our compliance and conduct teams use compliance data, breach data, to really understand what our risk profile might look like. One thing we would love to be able to do, but we're probably not there yet, is to do things like look at customer complaints and ahead of time, before it becomes a systemic issue or an endemic issue. So, these complaints are probably leading to it or telling us there's a problem here. So we're using pretty advanced analytic techniques to look at the massive data that NAB has to tell us a bit more about our risk profile, manage our risk, make things easier, make things more informative. In terms of the people we're looking for across the board, I mean, I obviously deal with people who are passionate about data and analytics, passionate with technology, but the partners that I have are people who deal with customers, deal with processes, and basically deal a lot with the complexities of a large organisation. My role is to help them and help them do their job better.
Thanks, John, and that's great to hear you say that, because our students get to take those real life examples, the real problems that you bring into the organisation and work with us on. So our academics get to simulate and almost bring to life what they're going to face, their students will face into when they go out into the world of work, so to speak. So that's great to hear. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and one thing I should say, Chaminda, is my affiliation with RMIT is through the Industry Advisory Committee. So I get to sit on, I'm actually privileged in that way to get to sit on and listen to what RMIT is doing in terms of their coursework, and I get to hear about what they're doing to make sure that the programs are, really relevant to industry. And so, in that way, RMIT is a little bit ahead of the game, in my experience, because they listen very carefully to what industry need and wants. And we get to see what are the latest, kind of innovations in terms of the programs they're delivering.
Thanks, John. It's great to hear. Michelle, how about yourself?
Okay, so hi, Chaminda. Thanks for inviting me here today. I am a developer engagement PM in the Azure Business Group for Microsoft. What that means is, in the simplest terms, I get to buy toys on my company credit card and play with them. So I have robots and I have all sorts of other toys that I get to build and show off at conferences, or when I go out to universities and schools, I get to talk to students about tech. And it's really the best job in the world, I think. What I'm supposed to be focused on is helping developers in emerging communities. So what that means is students is one of those emerging communities. Women would be another one. Data scientists and data engineering would be another one. Because although there have been data scientists and data engineers around for a really long time, they always saw themselves as scientists and experts in their own domain. They didn't see themselves as affiliated with technology at all. However, now, because of the growth of machine learning and AI, there's a lot of tools that they are using which suddenly inexplicably links them together with us. And so we would like to welcome them and let them know that, we are there to help them use that new technology so that they can get more out of what they are trying to achieve with their jobs. So yes, students, women, data science, startups as well, because there's another community of people that when they first start to do stuff, they have these big ideas, but they don't always know how to enable them, how to do something with them. And so, my team is there for that. We do have others in my team that will work with, the really big companies within Australia. But I said that for my role, I was really only interested in helping the emerging communities, going where there aren't a lot of people to help them, and try to do what I can to bring them along that journey. And so, our affiliation with RMIT, I would say that there are Microsoft people working in partnership with RMIT at every possible level. There are people who are part of account teams that work with all the universities across Australia, and they try to see that broadly the education programs are there to enable all students everywhere. But also there are specific ones for RMIT, and then there are different people in education teams that are really doing what they can either to enable educators or enable students or enable the staff that are supporting the educators, the students or the researchers. And I'm just kind of at the end there, available to help with anywhere that I can, because I think there's nothing more important than enabling the next generation into tech careers.
Thanks, Michelle. It's wonderful to hear. And I was just about to say, it doesn't sound like work in some ways, what you just described. But then again, the way all three of you talked, I think that's the key here. Once you find purpose and love for what you do, and you find enjoyment, it doesn't feel like work. So I think that's great to hear from you. Also, the examples that you gave are just some of the ways we partner with industry to make sure we are relevant, and also making sure that we are providing a great experience for students, not just for now, but for the future. Now let's lead from that point onto the next question. As we've all spoken about in the past, careers don't follow a linear path anymore. You can start somewhere and lead to a number of different paths as you go along, and certainly my own experience is that. So I'm quite keen to hear, particularly because RMIT prides itself in real hands-on experience, partnering with industry so that the students can go out into industry and then come back. And And that sort of experience makes you realize what you truly want to do. And sometimes within uni you change, and sometimes you change later on. But importantly, you have those, you build up a toolkit that allows you to do that. So in that context, I'm keen to hear about your own careers and the journey that you've been on. So, the sort of path that you've taken to get to where you are, I'm sure will be of great interest to our students. So John, can I come to you first?
Sure. So my background, it's a little bit eclectic, and saying that, I would actually think that students today would have a pretty more diverse kind of career path than I have. Today it seems to be changing quite a lot. But my own background is, I started as a university mathematics lecturer, and I really thought I would end as a university mathematics lecturer. I thought that was it. That was it for me, and I really loved math, and I loved teaching. I loved listening to students. But it didn't turn out that way, and one of the reasons why I think it didn't turn out that way is because just different opportunities came up, and I was open to them. So whilst I've always kept in touch with data and analytics, and I don't call myself a mathematician now. I call myself a data scientist, I guess. Whilst I've always kept in touch with that because that's my passion, that's my love. I've always been open to other things coming my way. So yes, I actually spent 10 to 12 years as a lecturer, and then I did some consulting, and then I did some work for industry, and then I kind of arrived at NAB, and all of those opportunities just came up. I guess a lot of that is unplanned. The one thread for me, and this is advice I would give to anyone kind of looking to how they would manage their career, is yes, have a plan, yes, but make sure that what you do, you have a lot of passion for what you do, because one, you'll enjoy it, two, you'll be really good at it, and three, it kind of gets you out of bed, so that's what I've kind of always kept to. And the other piece of advice I would have is your passion can change. For me, I've always loved maths, but I now do a bit more technology and a bit more talking to people and interaction. And your passions can change, and if they change, well, then pursue them. But that's been my background.
Great advice, John, and fantastic story there of how you got to where you are. Michelle, can I come to you next, please?
Sure. Well, I'll start way back just so I can show you how easy it is to jump around in your career. I did philosophy as my undergraduate degree. I did computer science for my master's, but that was pretty much because a bunch of boys in my second year told me that I couldn't possibly do computer science. And I'm so stubborn, when someone tells me I can't do something, I absolutely have to do it just to prove them wrong. But then I started working in the hospitality industry. I worked for Anheuser-Busch, the largest brewer by volume in the world. But then from within there, I started working in computing and did a little bit of a more traditional route. So service desk, and then second line support, and then third line support, then managing those people. And then service delivery management at IBM, which I then went into Microsoft and did service delivery management, which I did very well. I'm very good at that. However, I really missed having my hands in the tools. I really missed doing technical stuff. And so I spent 8.5 years at Microsoft trying to convince someone to take me into a more technical role, which is hard when you've spent quite a few years doing relationship roles. But eventually I found a really cool manager who actually is an RMIT graduate and very proud of it. And he said, "Michelle, have I got a role for you?" And then he put me in here, and he's actually managing the whole business group for Azure. And so he found another people manager to keep an eye on me. But the guy that he chose there as well is also really invested in students. He ran the Imagination Cup for us for a few years, and all the student programs. So anything that I say I want to do with students, he's like, yeah, 100% Michelle, off you go. So I'm real happy that I have found my place doing what I am excited about. And I think it is, as John said, one of the best things about working in a career in technology. You can jump around, there are no restrictions, you can follow what interests you, as long as you're really able to have that continuous learning mindset and keep improving yourself, then you can move to whatever is interesting to you within the career path.
Fantastic insights, Michelle. Clearly, you followed your passion, but also you found motivation in proving some of your friends wrong, which I also think is a great motivating factor. Sue, how about yourself?
I couldn't agree more with both John and Michelle. You need to find something that you're passionate about, and that might be different over time. So, when I first started as a nurse, I was really passionate about learning about biology and anatomy, and I really wanted to help people. But the further I went in my career, the more I wanted to be a people leader. I wanted to be able to lead people so that I could transfer my passion for those things to people that work with me. So, my career's been spent, I've been able to work pretty much in every state and territory in this country. I've worked in the public sector, the private sector, I've worked in the acute sector, aged care sector, pretty much been everywhere, because that's what health enables you to do. You can jump around all over the place. And part of, the excitement about health and why, I find being the CEO so fascinating is that it's this entire microcosm. So I've got lawyers working for me and engineers working for me and IT people and, clinicians. And so it's really cool to actually be able to understand how different parts of the business work and how those different careers span out for people. So I think, my advice to anyone, a bit like John said before, is always keep an open mind to new opportunities, because there's always something around the corner. And a bit like Michelle, if somebody's not going to give you the opportunity, go make it yourself and make that happen. So I think that's a really important piece, is that ongoing learning as you develop in your career, and it might be learning different things. But I think particularly for the women in the room, don't think you need yet another degree before you go and do something new. Take the talent that you've got and match it to something that gets you excited. And as you said, Chami, gets you out of bed every morning, because, some days aren't as much fun as other days. And so you do need to have something that you're really super passionate about.
Thank you, Sue. I think it's such great advice, and my own experience absolutely echoes what the three of you have said. Probably really important and timely advice, given a lot of our Year 12s, our school leavers are going into that moment in their sort of journey, trying to decide what they should pick. And I think the point you're all making is it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, follow what you are passionate about, that you're excited by, and what you're good at, John, to your point. And then through that, your journey will sort of take off and you'll find your own path, which is really important, because I know that there's a lot of pressure on students, and the current circumstance will add more to that. So really great advice. Thank you for that. Let's move on from the scenario that is the journey to the fact that you've spoken about some great experiences that have led to your own journey and the way that your careers have shaped through those experiences. And clearly that hands-on experience was key to it. So I'm keen to understand not just the path from university, but vocational education, postgrad qualifications. There are other ways to enter or to continue studying, so to speak. And Sue, I think you spoke about the scenario of always keeping up with the latest information, knowledge, and the trends, if you like. In that context, I'm keen to understand your views on vocational, postgraduate qualifications and other skill sets that might be the pathways, but also what skills are in demand in the current environment that you're seeing in front of us. Michelle, let me come to you this time.
Oh, I thought you were going to go to Sue, so you've thrown me off there. Yeah, well, one of the one of the most important things, I think, in a technology career, probably other careers as well, but definitely I found working at Microsoft, is you have to have that continuous growth, continuous learning mindset always. And they encourage us to keep certifying, to keep studying, and there are, within our own sort of role guide requirements, there are a certain number of certifications that we need to do each year, and it's mapped to your role, so you can choose, you can do the ones that are relevant to your role, but then there's also a lot of choice as well. So if there are other things that you want to do because you want to change career, you want to change role, you want to go in a different direction, you do those on top. And we get one learning day per month. Our managing director, Steve Worrell, puts a day in our calendar and it says learning day. And it means you are not meant to be having any customer meetings. You are not meant to be doing any other work. You are meant to be studying on that day, and you're meant to be, learning and improving and growing. There's a website called Microsoft Learn, which has a lot of free learning paths that you can follow, and they will take you to those vendor certifications. It is enough to just follow that learning path and then put in for your exam. You don't need to buy any additional books, watch any additional videos. You would be able to pass the exams just from those learning paths. And I try to do as many of those as I can. So I have done my data fundamentals, AI fundamentals, data scientist associate, AI associate, and, a whole bunch of other ones. I want to do the developer ones, but I'm afraid they might be quite hard. So I'm kind of working myself up to it mentally. It's difficult, I think, to do exams about code, whereas when you're building stuff with code, then it makes more sense. But I like doing exams, so it's not so bad. But yeah, they can be sort of bite-sized pieces. The fundamentals ones are quite easy, and then the expert ones are pretty hard. And so you can say to yourself, I'm just gonna do an easy one this month, or maybe I want to do something more meaty next month. But the key is to keep your brain engaged, keep learning, keep trying, keep growing. And it's not really so much the certifications in themselves, it's just that when you pass them, it shows yourself and it shows people around you that you are continuing along that learning path.
Thanks, Michelle. I love that. It's in a self-paced learning, and I think Microsoft have set a great example for a lot of industries and organisations to follow. A learning day. That's fantastic. Sue, can I come to you next, please?
Sure, I agree with Michelle. It doesn't, you don't necessarily have to. I mean, obviously, some jobs you have to have formal qualifications. So if you want to be a dentist, you kind of got to go and do the dentist training. You can't really just turn up and say, I want to be a dentist. Or, if you want, you want to be an accountant, you kind of have to go to university and become an accountant. But that doesn't necessarily need to then pigeonhole you that that's all you can do, because there's lots of other opportunities. And whether it's a postgraduate qualification, I personally did my nursing. I then went and did an applied science degree in human movement studies. Don't know why, I just thought it'd be fun. I did an MBA. I've done a postgraduate in leadership and Catholic culture because I actually worked for the Catholics for a while. So, that ongoing continuous education I think is really important. It can be in really small bite-sized chunks. I sit on a couple of boards, so I've done the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, which is like a week-long intensive. So it's just that ongoing education, and every year there's multiple mandatory training that I have to do as the CEO around, governance and all sorts of things like that. So it's just, as Michelle said, keeping your brain active and continuously learning. And it doesn't have to be something really formal. It can be something like on-the-job training, as some of the things that Michelle described. From a skill set in the healthcare industry. So as I said, healthcare is a complete microcosm, and there is no health revolution happening. So people aren't going to all of a sudden be healthy. So there is going to be a lot of work to do over the next decades in keeping people healthy, and it is shifting. We're trying to look a lot more at preventative health rather than the fix-it shop, which is what I call the hospitals. So there is a lot of work that's been looked at in that space on how you can actually do more preventative work and keep the community healthy, and how do you integrate health into the rest of society. So, what's the impact of, socioeconomics, where you live, the school that you went to, all of those sorts of things, and how does that impact on people's health? But I think from a hands-on, what do we need in health at the minute? We obviously need, a lot more nurses and a lot more doctors and a lot more dentists and allied health professionals. But also, some of the skills that we're crying out for at the moment is logistics. So because of all the online shopping everybody's done, and all the online Coles ordering, trying to find somebody to we run a warehouse, so we actually supply all the dental equipment for the state. Trying to find logistics people is almost impossible because they've all been sucked up driving trucks and doing the big Coles warehouses. So there's those sorts of roles. IT roles, particularly around some of the stuff that John was saying around data analytics and doing that big data analysis, because we have a lot of information in health, or a lot of data in health, and how do you turn that into information? So a variety of roles that you could do if health is something that you're passionate about.
Thanks, Sue. And again, the point you're making is, you've got to try and find the skills. Yes, you do need the formal qualifications for some roles, but you have to continue to learn and find those skills as you go along is important. And the fact that you've highlighted that you might be in one industry or one sector, but you within that sector then have a lot of ways to apply the different skills that you have, from logistics to being a nurse, if that may be the case. Great examples. And John, it's the last time you and I we spoke about the entire journey of whatever the customer journey might end up being. And if you're someone that's in the data sciences or AI insights, your ambition really is to make sure that you're helping that entire, through data insights, helping the customer through the entire life cycle of their journey. And again, VE and postgrad provides a way for you to pick up those skills at different stages in your career. So I'm keen to hear your thoughts.
Spot on, Chami. And we often, I say often, but I would say every single day, we think about the customer every single day, because without the customer, well, what purpose do we have? And we're there to help the customer. But can I say on the question of postgraduate qualifications, vocational training, the demand is huge. And in my area, and NAB is much bigger than my area, but in my area, I would say a degree is a ticket to the game. A postgraduate qualification opens your world, and it's bigger than the ticket to the game. And what I'm trying to say there is because I've been on the RMIT Industry Advisory Committee, I often, I've got the privilege of seeing some students come in and I can see them, they establish themselves, they do a great job, and then they find, wow, if I did a postgraduate kind of degree or postgraduate qualification in something, it actually broadens their horizon, and it's really interesting to see. Actually, there's a maturity aspect as well, and I don't mean maturity in terms of age. It's kind of maturity in terms of, it's kind of like you've been exposed to more, and so that kind of postgraduate qualification, it's more than just, can I really stress this? It's more than just that material. It opens you up in almost like a holistic person way to lots of different things. And an example, I'll give an example of that. We had someone who came in my modelling team, who kind of just helped us with, developing credit models and was really good at that, but wanted to do something else. So they went back and did a postgraduate qualification they did a little bit more technical because I felt they needed that, but they also expanded out into non-technical areas. And they came back, and now that we find people like that, or for example, this person is at NAB, but helps, senior management advise on, I just came back from a meeting this afternoon on AI and what are the principles that NAB should use in establishing AI, establishing machine learning. Not that we don't have them, but the meeting was about, how can we make them better? How can second line risk, help, make them, a little bit more consistent customer wide. And it's great to have technical people be more than just pure technical, and it's those qualifications that help you with that. I agree completely with Michelle in terms of, she talked about a growth mindset. It's really the growth mindset that leads you to, looking for, how can I expand my horizons? How can I expand my opportunities? And there's so much you can do with a postgraduate qualification. A degree is good, but you can just do so much more with a postgrad.
Thanks, John. It's so interesting. Your today's meeting, the conversation you're talking about is, I think, an example of what not just RMIT, to be fair, all educators must focus on. It's not just the technical skills, because only the gate in. You need to teach our students our future. It's about how to apply them. What are the right ethics, the values? What's the purpose behind what you do? It's so important. And I know for a fact that at the university that our academics are very conscious of that. It's not just about the theory, it's how you apply it that is so important. And it's great to hear all three of your examples. And it's reassuring in many ways that you talk of the world that's changing. And I'm curious, and I think you've touched on this particularly, Sue, talking about some of the gaps and areas of growth. But specifically, I'd like to hear from your industry, your organisation, your sector. Where are the jobs coming from? What areas are growing, particularly as we're seeing such change? I mean, I think the pandemic has brought forward the trends we were expecting to see 3 or 4 years away. They're here now. And certainly things that I remember talking about 2 years ago, the 5-10 year horizon, that's now. So you spoke about, this sort of massive increase in online shopping and deliveries. We've seen it elsewhere in the world, but certainly here in Australia, it's boomed. John, you speak of AI, and Michelle, you speak about the experiential learning and the way that we apply these things. They're all areas of growth. I'm keen to hear specifically in your area where you're seeing that growth and where your predictions are as we go through. And I might start with John. Let me stick with you this time.
So there's huge growth in lots of areas. I mean, I know, Chaminda, that's not helpful, but can I say that especially in my field, so what I am very close to and what I'm very familiar with is we have huge demand for people who, and I know people talk about data scientists, but data science is just one aspect, but for people who love data and love getting immersed in data and love finding out things that the data is telling them. And that could be a very analytic data scientist, that could be a data engineer, that could be a more technologist. But we can't meet, there's so much demand for people like that. We're not getting enough of the people that we need. NAB is going through a real revolution, in probably the same way that many other banks are going through, in that we are using, and what I mean, we're using 20 plus years right now of data that at any one point might represent 10 to 15 million customers, and so we really need people who are not scared by that and actually are excited by that, and can actually really immerse themselves in that data. So they're the kinds of skills that we're really calling out for, and there are opportunities at every level. So we have people. So for example, one of the people in my team was actually a director of research from RMIT, extremely technical, because we needed someone like that. But we also had people with, degree qualifications, because we needed them just to get into the data and tell us things about the data. So it traverses all those levels. But, technology, data, analytics, huge growth in our industry.
Thanks, John. Michelle, how about Microsoft and the tech sector?
Well, 100% agree with John. Data scientist, data engineer, data analyst, AI engineer, machine learning engineer, all of those, everything possibly linked to the field of data, huge. When I joined Microsoft Perth, there were 25 people in our little office, Today there's 100 people in that office, and we have 16 job openings just for Perth on the website open right now. It used to be, of those 25 people, 20 of them were salespeople and 5 were in delivery. It's a different world today. The roles are much more technical, and the biggest ones would be cloud solution architects, cloud engineers of all kinds, DevOps people, which is to say people who are able to span both developer and operations worlds, who are able to talk and understand the business problems. So it's not just about being technical anymore. It's about being able to talk to the business, listen to the business, understand what they need, and help translate that into a technology solution. And maybe you don't need to do all of that yourself, but if you are the kind of person that can listen to what people are trying to say to you and translate that into technology terms, then you definitely are set for life there. Yeah, I think the whole old school world of selling is gone, really. The way the world works now is you need people that can listen to the business, that can listen to end users, that can understand what they need and find solutions to help them. So it's not even about selling things to people anymore. It's about enabling them and giving them a way out of their pain. So if you are that kind of person, then you can really do well in the new world of work, I would say.
A great example, Michelle. And again, I think you bring to life this scenario where you can't just have, binary skills. You need to have multi-dimensional ways to apply your skills. So whether you understand business or you're a technologist, or you're a technologist who understands, how to apply business, it doesn't matter which way you look at it, but you need those skills clearly to be successful today. So that's a great example. Sue, what are the areas of growth that you're seeing through your work?
I would agree with both John and Michelle. So yeah, anybody that can analyze data, we love you. Anyone, I call them translators, people that can actually talk the technical language, but can also talk the business language. So what's the business actually need? They're like highly skilled and highly important. People leaders. So the new world where people aren't in front of you necessarily all the time, having people that actually can understand how to connect across video, not necessarily having people sitting in front of you to manage them. So I think that's one of the skills that's going to be necessary, going forward, is how do you have those really good people leaders to bring the business to life, but also to make sure that they're providing great experiences for the staff that are working in the organisation. From our perspective, like in the actual oral health field, dental assistants, and, if you could knit me a whole pile of those overnight, that'd be fantastic. We've got so in Victoria, we are rolling out the school dental program. So the government provided us $320, I'm going to say $1 million to roll school dental into all of the schools. So all the primary and secondary publicly funded schools. So we need a whole stack of dental assistants to be able to do that. We need some more oral health therapists. We need a few more dentists in that space as well. So they're, from a clinical perspective, the big roles. But then there's all the administrative work that goes alongside that. Good EAs, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to find a good executive assistant. They are few and far between. I personally have the best one on the planet, but those sorts of roles, people that can actually, manage people and manage process and actually get things sorted, they will find a job anywhere, doesn't matter what industry they're in my opinion.
Thank you, Sue. Let me stick with you for this next question. I mean, you talked about your journey to this point, but I think for some of our listeners, I'm sure the viewers would also understand how you progressed in your career. What experiences have led to you get to where you are and be successful in your career? Can I ask you that, Sue, to begin with, and we'll go to the others.
Yeah, sure. So when I finished my nursing and I went and did a science degree, I ended up back in the healthcare sector anyway, and was running rehabilitation services. And then somebody said to me, would you like to be a manager? I'm like, sure, sounds great. Let's go do that. No clue what I was doing whatsoever, but just put my hand up. And so then ended up as a nurse unit manager running a department. And then, we had in hospitals or in healthcare systems, you actually have accreditation processes, and somebody said, oh, would you like to help us out with accreditation? Sure, sounds great. No idea what I'm talking about, but let's go and have a crack at that. Someone then said, oh, could you help us with our staff engagement processes? Sure, let's go and have a look at that. So it's really about just taking opportunities as they come and looking at how you can actually add value to the position and to the organisation. You might not have all the technical skill or the technical detail. And lots of people say, so how do you, as a CEO, how do you manage those craft groups that you don't have technical knowledge in? And it's like, well, I don't have technical knowledge in 90% of the work that we do at Dental Health Services Victoria, but I do know how to ask the right questions. I do know when things don't look right or don't feel right. And I do know actually just to go and ask somebody, like if I don't technically understand something, can you explain that to me? So that I can understand, and then I can figure out what the pain points are. So from my perspective, I became a nurse unit manager, and then I became a clinical director of a hospital, and then I, became a chief operating officer. So it's a pretty structured, boring pathway, to be honest, but in a variety of different industries. So in a variety of different health services, in the acute sector, in the non-acute sector. And basically when anybody ever said, would you like to have a go at, I would say yeah. So yeah.
Great advice, Sue. I think importantly, it's about taking those chances when you get them, when people either present them or when you go get them yourself. I think that's really sage advice. Michelle, what about your journey?
Well, so while I was talking about the job that I'm currently doing, and you said it sounds like it's not really a job, it's just you playing with things and having a lot of fun. And that is true. A lot of people want to get into developer advocacy, developer engagement, community engagement roles, because that's what it looks like to them, that it's just people having fun and playing with cool toys. But it's very difficult to get into those jobs. But the way I got into it, I would say it was 8.5 years at least in the making, in that I was doing my job as a service delivery manager at Microsoft, and I was doing all that community engagement on top. So I would submit to speak at conferences, I would build apps, I would go and teach women to code, I would go out to universities and judge hackathons, and I would do all the things that I do today in my day job on top of my day job. And I was doing it for so long and so widely that it became impossible to ignore. They couldn't say you can't do that job because I was clearly already doing that job. And so it was inevitable that they would then award me formally the job that I had already been doing. So I would say, don't wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder and said, we anoint you with this role that you want to do. Just start doing it as well. If there's stuff that you love and you're passionate about, do it. Help your community, help others, enable others, show people that no matter what role you are in, you are still going to, well, as Susan said, add value, be more, do more, and, be all that you can be. And then ultimately you will get the role that you deserve.
That's fabulous, Michelle. Clearly you're sort of crafting your own path, which I think is fabulous advice for others as well. John, what about your career and your progression?
I was distracted, Chami, by Michelle's cup. Michelle, I want that GitHub cup. I want one. I don't have one. But listening to both Michelle and Susan, there's not much more for me to add. When Susan said grab those opportunities, that's my experience. So for example, many years ago when I was much younger than I am today, I was a quant in a analytics team, and the one thing I will say in terms of advice is, if you do your job well, I mean, yes, have the aspiration to to maybe be a people leader or maybe go to another area, have that aspiration, but really, have that, but focus on what you're doing day to day and do a great job. And if you do that well, I always guarantee you the opportunities will come. And that was my experience. I was in a team of like 30 people and I got tapped on the shoulder to be a manager and then 3 months later to be a head of because the head of disappeared. And I initially said no. I said, no, I don't want to be a head of. I'm actually just happy being a person dealing with data and not dealing too much with people. But then I thought about it and I thought, maybe that's not the right answer because I've got a lot to give back. I've got a lot of experience that might help and I should try something new. But the reason I think I was asked in the first place was because I really focused on adding value to the organisation, adding value to, and I knew what that meant. And I think if you do that well, the opportunities will come.
Thanks, John. Now, look, time flies when you're having fun. We've got 10 minutes or close enough to it, and we've got a number of great questions from the audience. And I don't think we'll have time to go to every single team, every single one on the panel. So I might just pick and hopefully we can broaden as we go through. So this one's an interesting one. I think it's really an important one. The question literally says, you are all very successful and so inspiring. Were there any roadblocks or challenges you faced early on or even throughout your career? Big learning curve, perhaps. And I'm sure all of us have had that. Sue, can I come to you with that question, please?
Sure. So a couple of things. One challenge is as a female, particularly female of my age group, we're really bad at actually promoting ourselves and saying we have achieved this. And it's not about big noting yourself, but it is about, as John said, doing your job really well, but making sure that people actually know you do your job really well is really important so that people, and I think, Michelle, you touched on it as well, so people can actually see that you can deliver is really important because people don't sometimes expect you to do that, particularly if you're not as outgoing as other people. I think from my perspective, actually learning is okay as long as you learn from it. So not being afraid to fail. So when I first became a people leader, I was awful at it. Like I had no clue what I was doing. And, it took me years to actually hone that craft and become really good at it. But I wasn't afraid to actually go, I actually don't know the answer to that, but let's work on it and figure out how that works together. So, some of those big epic fails happen early, which is fine. Just fail fast and get back up and move on, learn from it. So I think that's probably part of the journey that I went on.
That's great, Sue. Thank you. I think it's clear, isn't it? I don't think there's a world without problems, and when you face into those, I think you come out better for it. So, I think what you're saying is that, yeah, absolutely. Once you do a great job, make sure people know about it, but don't be afraid of facing into challenges. Michelle, I come to you for this next one because you spoke about, particularly at Microsoft, how you get allocated time to study and further your career, but not every organisation has that opportunity. So the question literally talks to, do you have any advice for anyone trying to balance returning to study and working full time? Keen to hear your thoughts. Obviously, Microsoft is quite progressive, but in general, what are your thoughts?
It's a really tough one, and I've seen a lot of people in that exact scenario, particularly now during this COVID pandemic. It's a really, really hard time. But there's a couple of programs that I'm involved in that I think are really good in terms of offering a different way to study rather than, full-time study, full-time work. So I mentor for a program called She Codes. And what that is they offer a 6-month program to women. And and it is fully funded by industry sponsors. So last year, BHP sponsored that program, along with a bunch of others like RAC and Robert Walters. And what they did was they put 15 women from BHP into it and 15 women from the community. The study was a Tuesday or Wednesday night and a Saturday morning all together in a class where you would do stuff together and work on projects, and the rest of the stuff was online so you could fit it around your work. The people at BHP that were on it, they were pretty much all geologists. So I'm answering two questions in one here. They were all geologists, and they had reached a point in their careers where they were stuck. They couldn't go any higher without having those data skills that John was talking about, those AI skills, the machine learning. Whereas if they went on this course and they learned a little bit more, they learned some developing, they learned some code, they learned some AI stuff, they could then in fact continue their career as a geologist, but with augmented skills and not having to pass the work off to more higher up advanced and technological people. So, you know, it enabled their career path. The ones that were in the community, they obviously had the choice of where they wanted to go, but there was work opened up in BHP, in the other sponsors as well, to sort of help those people move forward. So in that way, they kind of had a manageable learning path that was aligned to a work placement. So if you can look for those kind of programs, I think that would help. If you are studying at RMIT and doing a full-time job, then I guess my biggest advice is find yourself a good network of other students to collaborate with and to work with together. Because just like in the university, it's the same in the workplace. You're not expected to have all those skills yourself, but if you can find those skills within a team around you, then you can get a lot more done together than you could on your own. And showing that you know how to work in that way will also make you a lot more employable.
Fabulous advice, Michelle. I think you're given two lenses there. One is if you're looking to further your career, reach out to your managers, to your organisation, and have a conversation, because you know there is a question, John, for you actually about NAB, and I used to work in a bank as well. It's not, you know, the world has changed. It's not, to your point, people don't come and tap you on the shoulder and say, here, go do this course. But if you go after something and you can show value to the organisation, that's one way. There are other organisations, there's government bodies, there's funding you can go after. So that's the one lens where you can go and get help from a study point of view. The other side, Michelle, is absolutely to your point. There's a community, there's a support network for students themselves, because it's not just the work and study that you're balancing life itself. So, you know, I mean, my sister-in-law who's, you know, going back to school, to uni to do teaching, while, you know, 3 kids and a family while working full time. That's what most, I mean, so you talk about women, that's, to be blunt, that's what life is. So there is a support network across all three of those. And the advice I think you're giving is go find that support network in all three areas: family, you know, your students, colleagues, your friends, and from a work perspective. I think that's really important. Now, 1 minute left, so I'll just make this, John, I couldn't help but come to you with this question. How do you feel AI will impact jobs? We did a conversation a couple of years ago maybe about robots will eat your jobs. I don't think that's the case. I think we'll create more jobs through AI, and I think we'll be far more excited by the jobs that AI creates for us personally. So in that context, how do you feel AI will impact our jobs going forward, as the last question?
So can I just very quickly, to the one about, you know, working full time and studying, I've been in both situations, meaning I did that. And I was also in a position where someone in my team did that. And just very quickly, can I just give that person 3 pieces of advice? You know, I think some of it was covered. You need the support of your employer. You need the support of your family. You need to be tenacious, and you need to be extremely organised. So if you all those things, then yes. If you're not, then make sure that happens. But you really need support of people around you. You cannot do it on your own. I was doing my PhD full time, and it took me 4 to 5 years as well as working full time, and that was, whilst it was valuable, I'll never want to do it again. But in terms of AI, can I quickly say we're seeing some of that already? So, and I'm referring to NAB and also the wider industry. We're already seeing in terms of NAB, I wouldn't fear it's people losing jobs. What it's doing is it's making jobs and people function at a higher level. So we used to have a lot of people in NAB creating reports and getting data together and doing all the. We have just as many people now not doing that because we have automated processes and we have AI processes early, and what they're doing now is they're spending more time interpreting those results and creating insight. That's what I see happening. Yes, some careers may change or some job functions may change, but there are so many opportunities. AI, I think, will elevate the kind of work we do.
Thank you, John. And sadly, and I genuinely say sadly, the time is up for us to finish our conversation. I have really enjoyed the chat, and I'm sure our audience have as well. Firstly, thank you so much, our industry panelists, Susan, John, and Michelle, not just for today, but your continued partnership with the university and your support for our students. It's fantastic to work with you, and thank you once again for sharing your insights today. We're very grateful, not just for your time today, but as I mentioned, for everything that you do for the university and our students. Great. Thank you for the organisers and the participants. I hope you found the sessions really useful and insightful. And importantly, this is, as I said, one of many sessions that we've got coming up throughout the month. Please go to the RMIT website. You'll find not just the sessions that are coming up, but some of the ones that we've hosted through the last few months through our open day and many other sessions, because all of that, the rich content, the insights will certainly help you with your choices, the decisions that you make with whatever comes next for your career or your path forward. And of course, please reach out to any of our team members, study at RMIT. The team will be glad to answer any questions and support you work out whether it's an RMIT or otherwise what's the best next thing for you to do. So thank you, panelists. It was wonderful to have you and share the session with you. All the best to the students who are about to sit their exams, and then from that point decide what might be next for them if you're a school leaver, or otherwise if you're thinking of taking your next step in your career or changing path. Again, please reach out. I think the future is really quite exciting. On that note, thank you everyone, and best of luck.